The great American novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald once wrote that there were no second acts in American life, yet I believe he was obviously mistaken. Examples of second acts or comebacks abound in our society. To believe that one is doomed to repeat the past is discounting the enormous capacity of human beings to overcome adversity, to learn from their mistakes, and to make mid-course corrections that will take their life in an alternative direction. You do have the ability to change course in midstream, but to do so obviously requires a mindset of someone who is committed to being proactive, tenacious, and willing to modify their plan based on new information. Man's tolerance for pain is great, but it is not unlimited. Eventually, when the pain becomes too great, people will either succumb or will make a conscious decision that there must be another way. In the latter case, they will actively seek to become the proactive agent for change in their life. Comebacks, redemptions, and second acts are ingrained into the psyche of our culture today. It is in adversity that we truly measure a person and determine their worth. We most admire someone who is able to overcome a major setback, whether it be a health issue like cancer, a relationship issue like a divorce, or the death of a loved one, or a financial crisis such as bankruptcy. It is often these major setbacks that put the spotlight on our lives and show us the way to overcome adversity and to resurrect a life that once appeared headed for the garbage heap. Like Rocky, the boxer in the movie of the same name, we admire the underdog who can raise up against all odds to compete at their own highest level. Sooner or later, we all encounter roadblocks, setbacks, and adversity. It happens to everyone. The key question is, will you allow it to defeat you, or will you use it to motivate you to determine and demand a second chance and to make a comeback to redeem yourself? Yes, we all get knocked down, but successful people know how to pick themselves back up. So how do we do it? Before you can evaluate whether your attitude towards problems serves you or hinders your growth, we should examine what constitutes a problem. Problems only exist when there is an interruption or block to some prior commitment or goal that you have in place. Without a commitment to a specific goal, the problem would appear to be either insignificant or not even a problem. Comebacks are associated with adversity, and adversity is associated with problems. Yet the only reason that you have a problem is because you have goals. An event or circumstance is only perceived as a problem when it prevents you from achieving a particular result. I'd like to give you an example. Let's say I live next to the Grand Canyon. Now that's not a problem. It only becomes a problem when my goal is to get to the other side. Now I have a problem of major proportions. I've crossed the Grand Canyon, and there's two ways to approach the subject. One is to drive or walk around the canyon. That's 200 miles, and I've done that. The other is to walk across the canyon. That's 21 miles, mile down, mile back up, and I've done that also. Both get you where you want to go, which was to get to the other side. But they're different adventures. Most people, however, they choose not to ever attempt or begin the journey. The north side and the south side of the canyon are different, yet they're both part of the same canyon. When I drove around it, I got the feeling, obviously, of the immensity. But when I walked through it or crossed it, I had a deeper appreciation, a richer experience of what the canyon was actually really like. I got to see the canyon to its fullest when you actually walk or hike through it. Both ways gave you an appreciation of the depth and scope of the Grand Canyon, but when you walk through it, you opened yourself up to new learning experiences. You developed and were part of being the canyon. Goals become not just to get to the other side. In this case, the goal was in the enjoyment of the journey and the experience. The Chinese word for crisis is actually composed of two characteristics. One represents danger and the other opportunity. In times of danger, great opportunities abound, but it is your mindset that will determine how you view that experience. You need to see problems as a road sign that tells you that you're making progress towards your goal, but now you need to consider if a mid-course correction is warranted or is necessary for you to continue on. Your challenge is to make the necessary adjustments as you embrace the so-called problem. You must look at every obstacle, setback, rejection, and constraint as a learning opportunity to modify your plan so that your goal can be achieved. Do not allow a temporary setback to become a permanent disability. We need problems because we need the pearls of wisdom that they bring. We desire new experiences because with those experiences are new learning opportunities. Whenever I was running my business, whenever it came time to hiring an employee, whether it be an intern, some senior staff person, someone that I might be considering as a partner, or even a high school student doing a job for us just over the summer, I always wanted to be involved in the end process of the actual hire of that person. And I always asked this question: where did that person see themselves 1 year from now, 5 years from now, and 20 years from now? I asked that question because I wanted to get a feel of whether or not that person had some long-term goal or had thought what their future might be. Wanted to see if they were just passing through the night or if they actually had some long-term plan or direction. Often what we find is a person works a job for 40 years and they claim to have 40 years of experience. But for most people, this is a lie. Actually, what they tend to have is 2 years worth of experience 20 times over. The learning process has stopped, and what they're doing is they're repeating doing the same thing over and over again that they've mastered. So in this case, because they mastered it in the first 2 years, the learning experience has stopped. They're basically in a holding pattern, or I'm going to use the term, they're actually wasting time. Wasting from the standpoint that they're not learning. And that's what our purpose here is to learn and grow. But some people actually continue to repeat doing the same thing over and over again when they're not getting the results, when they haven't mastered the situation. And this is really a different aspect, and it's really what we would call insanity, to continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. When you refuse to try something new that might work and continue to do what you know doesn't work, that's the mark of insanity, and yet that's what so many of us do. If we look at basic living and attitudes towards life, there's two. There's an optimistic one and there's a pessimistic one. There's studies that would indicate that when people are born, a child is born, they're probably all what we would call, the psychologists anyways, highly creative. And what's interesting is that even though when they first are able to test children for high creativity, they find that 90% are highly creative. By the time they're age 6, that number has reversed and only 10% are what they call highly creative. And I think the difference in a highly creative person and one that is no longer highly creative, because I think that really if we start looking at the evidence, it indicates that we all have the ability to be highly creative, we'll find that the highly creative person has a different attitude than the one that no longer is creative. The highly creative person sees the adventure as fun and that it's a learning process. Most people in our society by the age of 6 have had that high creativity beat out of them. They've been ground down and they've become a situation where they've decided that it's more important to play it safe. They now are looking at trying to avoid pain. They're trying to earn or prove that they're worthy, and their measure of success has now been projected as determined by someone outside of themselves, and therefore they're more concerned with getting it right or being right, and therefore they're no longer willing to take chances that the highly creative person would do. First mentality that one of the highly creative person, we look and they're interested in the process and the experience of being. They're not results oriented, they're more interested in having the experience and learning from that. The second group is concerned about results and other people's opinions. They need to be right because they know that if they don't get the right answer, if they go out on a limb with something new, they'll be told that they're wrong, and that as opposed to the idea that they've rewarded for their efforts and their ingenuity and imagination, they're beat down and told that they've got it wrong, that they're no good. So the first attitude empowers, motivates, excites, and is the beginning of really being in the adventure. The second, though, has a tendency to really cause the person to avoid, limit, and with the concern of getting the right answer, otherwise of conforming, because if you have the right answer, someone else has already determined for you whether it's right or wrong. So in the first mindset, you've got an internal focus that you decide whether or not your worth comes from being. The second, there's an external focus. Someone else decides whether or not you're worthy. When we look at these two attitudes, what we'll see is that problems in the first case are looked at by the creative person as necessary feedback that you need for you to achieve your goals. It tells you that mid-course corrections are perhaps required. In the second situation, though, problems are to be avoided at all costs because the goal is to play it safe, to play it small, or not even attempt to take a chance at all. You know, the day that I'm not learning is the day that I hope that I'm dead, lying on my back in my coffin with a lily in my hand. Why? Well, because if I'm not learning, I'm already brain dead. And in this case, talk of brain dead, but if you're not learning, you're merely a zombie going through the motions. We are unaware of the fact that when we label something as a problem, it is merely our interpretation of what happened and not the actual event itself. In our society, the hidden belief is that the appearance of a problem comes with the interpretation that there must be something wrong with us or with another person. The situation that we perceive to be a problem is unwanted and should be avoided at all costs. This hidden relationship with problems leaves us really disempowered and unable or unwilling to handle a situation. Typically, we go out of our way to avoid anything that might lead to the generation of a potential problem. And this is really the problem itself. Without challenges, we can't really grow. Successful people have a different orientation and mindset to problems. They desire new experiences because they see them as new opportunities to learn and grow. They realize that with these new opportunities often come new problems, and they will arise because they're breaking new ground. They realize that problems are needed because of the teaching lessons that they bring. Successful people realize that little is gained by repeating the same task over and over again. They value new experiences because they want to be moving down the road. They don't want to be repeating prior learned lessons. Now, whenever I use this term successful, it does not mean some measure of wealth, fame, power, or good health. Success is a mental state that involves being comfortable with who you are and actually being true to your own values. These two different mindsets or attitudes towards adversity and problems could be looked at this way. Successful people embrace problems for the learning opportunities that they provide. Unsuccessful people avoid problems due to their concern over the results and other people's opinions. They need to get it right to validate their own worth, and this, of course, puts a lot of fear into them. Successful people see adversity or problems as a necessary feedback mechanism that warns them that a mid-course correction may be necessary if they are to achieve their desired goal. They're interested in the process. They have an internal gauge to measure their success, and they do not need others to validate their self-worth. Unsuccessful people tend to avoid problems. Their goal is to play it safe, to play it small. They keep their goals small or don't even attempt to move out of their comfort zone for fear of encountering a potential problem. Their goal is to avoid pain at all costs, even if that means that they give up their happiness and their desires. Their focus is on external results since they rely on other people's opinions to determine their worth. The first mindset empowers, motivates, and provides the excitement and adventure of being. It has an internal focus and an internal measure of self-worth. The second mindset disempowers, avoids, limits, and is concerned with having. Otherwise, it's fear-based and looking at results to determine what is your worth, and that someone else from outside or the results that you achieve determine your worth. And if you don't achieve those particular results, you are a failure. There's something wrong with you as opposed to something maybe wrong with the plan that needs correction. Sooner or later, we all encounter roadblocks, setbacks, and adversity. It happens to everyone. The key question is, will you allow it to defeat you, or will you use it to motivate you, to demand a second chance, to make a comeback, and to redeem yourself? Yes, we all get knocked down, but successful people know how to pick themselves back up.
So how do we do it? Well, in the next few days, you'll be receiving the second video in this series, and it will discuss a 7-point plan, how problems can now become opportunities so that you too can be known as a comeback kid.